fans, welcome back to Room 237 for another review. Before I get into that, just a couple things. One, if you haven't subscribed already, I hope this is the video where you'll do that. Sorry if I'm stuttering and talking slow. Yes, I hope this is the video where you'll subscribe. Also, you can find Room 237 reviews as a Facebook group and on Instagram. Also, just a side note, we've had a bit of a hot, dry spell where I live lately. And then today it's been rainy and kind of windy, so it's really stirring up the pollen. And we haven't got the air conditioner in yet, so we've had some windows open, and it's really kicking up the allergens. So if you're seeing me kind of wiping or sniffing, I apologize, that's why. But the review for today is a very interesting one. It's one that I've seen at the store a few times, really knew nothing about. I went into this completely blind. But it is I was going to say notorious, but I don't even really know if it's that well known. But it's an anthology by Douglas Buck, who, the only other thing I know of, he did a segment for the Theater Bazaar, which is an anthology I didn't get to last Halloween, hopefully this Halloween. But it's a film of his called Family Portraits, a Trilogy of America. Now, just by looking at, wow, why am I stuttering today? Wow. I mean, I know I do anyway, but Jesus. Just by looking at the cover, I was getting kind of snuff, like pseudo snuff film kind of looks, or at least one that has that kind of feel to it. Even if that's not exactly what it is, just one that's supposed to have one of those heavy kind of feels. And what this is it's 3 short films by Douglas Buck that was made between 1997 and 2003. With the one that everyone knows, or at least people who are familiar with these, is the first one, 1997's Cutting Moments. And then the second is Home, which was made in 1998. Then the third is just called Prologue, which was made in 2003. And then it was all packaged together in 2003. I think it was released in 2004. Excuse me. And this was put out by Seven Films, which they always do a great job with their releases, and they specialize in more extreme kind of films. And you have the option to either watch it as an anthology, as it was, how was it? Oh, and then there's an early short film, which I actually didn't watch, but you can watch it all together as the anthology, as it was premiered at, I think it was the Montreal Film Festival or French Film Festival, or you can watch them individually, which if you watch them individually, not with all of them, but with Cutting Moments, you get a little bit extra, at least in the end credits. Now, I don't really know how I'm going to tackle this review, because I don't really want to spoil everything just on the complete, or the initial run-through. So I guess I'll say what it is there's 3 short films that really are just a look at the dark side of American family. The disillusioned, disconnected, the disjointed, the ones that have had tragedy struck. Just really the awful kinds of families that, and not in like a Chainsaw Massacre kind of way, but just like I guess the first two deals with, a dad that kind of is screwed up. And then the third one is more how tragedy has struck this family, or at least this daughter who is still alive, but pretty much the crumbling of a family, or these families, in various ways. One thing I do want to point out is it does have this low budget, independent feel to it, which I really appreciated. It does add to the charm of it. Very little dialogue in all three stories. I mean, the second story, Home, has a voiceover, but even that's kind of scarce. It's all kind of in the visuals, or at least the atmosphere or vibes that it puts out. And I've also said in several, I've said in several videos that there's a lot of movies nowadays that really just spoon feeds you every detail with exposition, or has to explain this, or has to have flashbacks to say what this is. And there's a lot of people where, like, if it doesn't have that, they'll be like, well, I hope there's a sequel where they explain why he wore a jacket at the end. People in movies that need every fine detail. This one doesn't do that. This one, it really is like these people's lives have been going on as such, and we just happen to get a glimpse in the window as is, and we got to piece it together from there, if that makes sense. Which, I do like movies like that. I like movies that have enough faith in their material and their audience to piece things together, and not have to be like, okay, this is what's going on, this is what's happening, we're telling you everything, we're showing you everything, and then we're gonna sequel bait it or prequel bait it so we can further explain things, because people want to know more about everything. So, like, the first story, Cutting Moments, which is the one that, or at least people that are familiar with these films, again, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering so bad, I don't know why. Probably had too much of energy drink, not enough food. I don't know. But at least of the films that people are familiar with, this is the one that people really seem to talk about. And actually, Tom Savini supervised and provided the effects for this one, so that's pretty cool. It's a very quiet movie. It's a very cold, somber movie. The whole film has this very somber feel to it, especially the third one. In this, we see a dad with shears on hedges, a kid playing on the grass, and it's like a cloudy fall day. And then the mom is inside, just kind of looking through the window. Dad goes over to the son. The son has these stuffed Power Ranger dolls, has them in a suggested position. Dad takes one of them, sends him inside. They're at dinner, silent dinner. The mother is kind of talking about lawyers and cases and hints towards like Child Protective Services. It doesn't come out and say it, but we kind of get the idea that the son's going to be taken away. And the dad is just not with it. I will say I like the look of the dad, the way, he does have this stereotypical look, like sort of like almost like an island of hair, the big glasses. Not to say all people that look like that are like this, but the way they use the stereotype, I think it fits. And I am going to be going into heavy spoilers, so if you're into movies that you kind of got to think about, or one where it really is just about the mood, the atmosphere, the vibes that it puts out, then definitely go ahead and check it out. The first story is definitely the most graphic. At the end, this is from the second story. The third one is definitely more depressing and the most somber out of all three. But it's definitely not an in-your-face, shocking, trying to be shocking film. I will say this one, even with what it doesn't show you or what it doesn't explain to you, it has enough weight and power that you still feel it and that it's still effective. So I applaud it for that. But I'm going to be getting into spoilers now, because the best way to go into it is as blind as possible. Because I went into it not knowing a thing about it, and I still got plenty out of it. And from some of the few videos I've seen on YouTube, other people went into it kind of blind as well. So I'm getting into spoilers now. So then after we see them at dinner, we see the mother and father, they're laying in bed. The mother has a tear rolling down her face. She rolls over and she looks at this picture from their wedding. And I think like best man, maid of honor. There's like voiceover from the wedding, like, you're so lucky, you found the one. And then she rolls over and he has left. He's not in the bed, and she didn't hear him get up. But we hear whispering from the other room, saying like, I love you, everything's gonna be okay, I'm gonna make this all up to you. Then we hear the kid say, I don't think mommy would like this. And then we hear the dad say, I love you. And then we hear the mother say, like, what have I done? Now, what I got from that is, and it doesn't come out and say it, I haven't really found too much online where it comes out and says it, but I think he's been sexually abusing his son. And the mother is fully aware of it and hasn't done anything. She's kind of let it go under the radar. And that's kind of why she's saying, like, what have I done? And now that Child Protective Services is coming in, probably taking him away, she's kind of taking it upon herself. So yeah, I took it as he's sexually abusing the son. So then the next day, the dad's watching baseball, the son is outside playing, the mother's in the bedroom, and she decides to, she puts this bright red lipstick on, finds this a pretty red dress, tries to make herself look good and try to spark some interest in him. Maybe find some kind of connection, get their marriage back together, try to get him to focus on her more. And whenever something like this goes on, I try to pay attention to see if there's a connection or anything clever. Here, I don't think there was. He's watching baseball, and the only audio is what's coming from the TV. I try to see if there's any kind of, like, what they're describing in the baseball game is kind of similar to what's going on in front of us. I don't think that's the case, but I can't help but try to do that. She walks out. He just kind of gives her a look, then looks back at the TV. And this actress did a great job. Just want to get this actress's name. I think it was Sally something. This damn thing would work. But they did a really great job at just, her complexion is very pale. She's got bags under her eyes. Like she is just stressed and out of it and really kind of at the end of her rope. Okay, it's not Sally. Nika Ray is the one that plays the mom. And then she goes back in the bedroom, and first she harshly wipes off the lipstick with a towel. And then she grabs a copper chore and starts, going like that. And she goes faster and faster and faster until it's all chewed up looking. And then she takes these scissors and starts cutting her lips off. And a lot of it is very suggested. Like, we see a lot of blood drips either on her chest or in the sink or on the floor. We do kind of get as it kind of pinches, and we hear the snipping sound, just enough to. So she cuts her lips off, and she comes back out into the living room. I mean, of course, she's all like, all these tears. Again, looks great, like with those bags under her eyes, really looks out of it. He looks up at her. He looks concerned but intrigued. Takes his glasses off. We get this, time jump, and we see like blood drops and bloody footprints in the floor, and we see them in bed together, back to naked in a sexual position. He's crying, and he's got garden shears up against her breasts. He's already cut one off. And we see it just enough to see like the blade kind of squeeze it. But it's really like when we see his arms and hear the sound, and she's not really screaming. She's kind of just and kind of gurgling because it's all this blood. He's crying, and then he turns the shears on himself, castrates himself. He falls over. Camera pans out, seeing the son laying outside with his stuffed animals. Now, if you watch the anthology, it ends right there. And each story is called 1, 2, then prologue. If you watch it by itself, you get the end credits where it plays If by Pink Floyd, which I've always loved that song. And it's mixed with like old 8mm footage and photographs of like them when they were in happy marriage, happy life, playing catch, playing outside, just life together, and mixed with photographs of police and child protective services coming to find the bodies and take the son. And just the juxtaposition of those two timed photographs with that song, I think really goes well with the end credits. But again, if you watch the anthology, it doesn't have that. Yeah, I will say the gore effects, I mean, like when her face, you got all that viscera, and then when the breasts are cut off and there's just blood everywhere. It is very well done, especially for the budget. Again, it's Tom Savini. So then we have Home, and I will say Home is my least favorite of the two. We have a guy in his work office, and he's the one narrating it, and it goes back and forth between his early childhood kind of all the way up. He's narrating it. We see his early life. His dad is abusive towards him, towards his mother. He's always trying to look at his dad, but his dad always says, people shouldn't stare. His son plays a recorder in school, but when he practices at home, his dad breaks it. He tells the mother that his coffee is too hot, so she blows on it, gives it back, and she's very trembly. Again, they did a good job. Wow, voice. They did do a good job with her as well, with like the bags under the eyes and kind of stringy hair. But you don't see her that much in the film. At one point, we do see the son hears some noise coming from the bedroom. And the mother's like naked on all fours, and the dad is in his underwear, and he's kind of like prowling around her, telling her how he controls her. I'm in control. You know, you do what I say all the time. The son starts adopting self-mutilation by whipping his arm. And then eventually his mother's taken away for psychiatric care. And we get the idea the dad just wasn't there for him. Then we see him in college. He finds God. He meets this one woman. And somehow, it doesn't go into it, but he somehow marries her, has a daughter, but then we see that, you know, his religion is really his main concern. He still whips his arm, but, you know, we see that he really pushes the religion on the family. He has issues with sex. The wife and daughter seem terrified of him and very uncomfortable. Like when they do their prayers, they're all kneeling, but he's like holding his wife's hand almost in like a kind of like the way you would to try to get someone to submit, like kind of hold their hand. Like he's trying to do something to the water heater. She's doing laundry. She takes her shirt off. And when he looks over, she's like, oh, sorry. But they're husband and wife and have a daughter. So I guess he's very against sex or whatever. Then she cries and says she has needs. But again, he's also very disconnected. And one day he sees their daughter in the treehouse out back with a boy from the neighborhood. And, you know, they're just kind of whispering in each other's ears, and she has her hand on her dress, on her leg. She doesn't pull it up or anything. She just kind of, like, she's sitting on her knees. She's kind of, like, holding her dress, kind of, I guess, just kind of, like, moving her hands. I guess he sees it as sexual. And then that night, he's sitting out on the porch, and he asks the daughter what she and the mother does during the day when he's not there. And we see that she's very terrified of him as well. And so then the next day, it's breakfast. They're bound, they're tied and gagged around the breakfast table. He goes to clean his bowl, has a knife, and then the next scene, he just puts on his suit jacket and the house is covered in blood. He just walks past the kitchen where they're on the floor, you know, strewn about, bloody. He goes and sits outside and he says he feels the presence of his father. There might be something that I missed about this story. Again, this movie does do a good job at just not spoon feeding you every little fact or aspect. Sometimes it would have been nice to have a little bit more, but I think this did do a good job where, you know, I'm sure some people would say, well, you didn't even see him kill the family. I thought it was going to be more extreme than that. I think it did, you know, again, this is one of those movies where it doesn't have to show you all the violent stuff, and it can still be pretty violent and effective. So then we get the third story, prologue, and this one's definitely the most depressing. At first, it seems like there's two different stories going on at the same time, but then we see how they're connected. There's this elderly couple who live out on this farmhouse, and they're very disconnected. And then we see there's this young woman who's being picked up and brought home after quite a while of being away at like a hospital for this accident. You know, she's led to believe that it was this horrific car accident that left her paralyzed a double amputee, and she's got metal claws as a replacement. So she's brought home by her father, and that's where she finds out that her parents, what I got from it was that her parents didn't really love each other. They're splitting up. Her boyfriend that she was seeing at the time of her accident, she finds out that he's moved on, he's married. She sees a picture of herself in her car, and she's holding a teddy bear, and they say, you know, they never found your teddy bear from the accident. And we go back and forth between this family and the elderly couple. And the elderly couple, the old man is usually just out in his barn where he does paintings and clay figurines. We know he used to work at the post office, but he's retired. And we know there's something off about him. We just don't quite know what. And so then the dad brings the daughter into town to the post office. She meets her former boyfriend, notices that's where she learns that he got married. And she sees a picture of the elderly man on the wall as like employee of the month or retired but great service. And she starts sobbing and trembling. It all starts coming back to her because her memory was foggy. She didn't really remember much before or around the accident. I keep hitting this inhaler. Damn allergies. Affects my asthma too. So then at this point, it comes back to her. So she leaves her parents' house. She has an electronic wheelchair. Gets to the old man's house, which he just kind of submits and cries. She raises one of her prosthetic hands to him. But then she just leaves. And the elderly wife doesn't really know what's going on. She goes out into his workshop and finds this, this house of horrors, basically, these paintings and these clay figures, all sort of depicting acts of sexual violence. And there's some trophies that he's collected, like there's some birthday presents or, a purse, the teddy bear from the picture. And she sees him way out in the field digging. So she goes up to him, and that's when he says, "They're out here somewhere. They're all out here. I thought I'd remember." The teddy bear's on the ground, or that's where she sees the teddy bear, and he says, "The girl that was just at the door, that's hers." So we see that she was raped and tortured, probably abducted, raped, and tortured by this man, and somehow was able to get away. Or he stopped and he let her out and made it look like an accident. Doesn't really go into detail. But the elderly wife goes out to where this woman is, and she gives her back the teddy bear. And just before her father comes to pick her up, earlier we saw this mother with this young girl who were homeless hanging out by the post office. And the young girl walks up to her and asks why she's outside if she's in a wheelchair. Like, doesn't she have a home to go to? And I do like this line of dialogue, because again, the dialogue is scarce in this film, but it does a good job with its visuals, its score, and its pacing to kind of, in its mood and atmosphere, to make up for the lack of dialogue. But I like this part where she says, when the girl asks, "Don't you have a home to go to?" And she says, "I used to. It was like a fairy tale. I was the young princess." The girl asks what happened. She says, I don't know, but it's not that way anymore. Which I think is a great way to say, this innocence has been taken from her. She's never going to be the same. And while she was away, her home and family also fell apart. So then she gives the young girl the teddy bear, and her father comes and picks her up. And then we see that the elderly woman sort of had this breakdown in her house. All these photos are smashed. She's laying on the floor crying, and the husband is still out in the field. And there's all these holes, and he's still digging, trying to find these bodies that he buried. And this story did a great job with just showing this snowy field with this slow, sad piano that almost sounds like Silent Hill. It sounds like a slower Silent Hill score. The whole movie, all three stories have this very ominous, dark score to it. And this one is definitely the most somber, just like those barren, snowy fields. And just, the camera barely panning around with that piano. Again, like that soft Silent Hill score. And then, once you piece everything of the story together, it's really tragic and sad. And put together in such a way that not all the details are there, but just enough for you to put it together and really just be like, wow, this whole... both these families are now crumbled, this marriage and this family. This Blu-ray also comes with another short film that I actually didn't watch. And also a couple different interviews from the That's Dark podcast where Douglas Buck was a guest. There's one on... I did listen to the one about cutting moments, and then there's one that I think is just either an interview or about the film in general. But yeah, you can watch it as either the anthology or each short as by itself as it was presented at the festivals where they premiered. Three stories. The first one is like a half hour. The last one is, Cutting Moments is like 26 minutes. Prologue is like 51. So, 70. So, the second one's about half hour. And it's really built on mood, atmosphere. It's definitely scarce on both dialogue and details with, plot and everything. But it's done in such a way that the emotion and the mood that it creates is definitely the most impactful, which enhances the violence that either is or is not present on screen. I think each performance is done well. The characters that are meant to be intimidating and abusive, even when they're not speaking, they look the part. The ones that are supposed to be submissive and abused and stressed and terrified really look the part, with the bags under their eyes or the way they tremble. For such a low budget film that not a lot of people talk about, or three low budget films, it's all put together very nicely. I was actually very impressed with it. And I definitely would say that I'm glad I went into it as blind as I did. Because I actually enjoyed having to piece together each story, kind of have all these details not put in there and have to think about it. I actually really enjoyed that. It's nice to once in a while have a movie that doesn't spoon feed you everything like a lot of movies nowadays. But yeah, this was a decent, and it's also a different way to attack such extreme content, extreme material, to do it in such a way that is more under the surface, but just as effective, I think anyway, as if it was up front and center. It's one of the better ones to do it that way, I think. But yeah, pretty decent anthology, and I really love the quality to it too. It's got this great low budget, low quality look that makes it very intimate as well, and just really is a trilogy of the dark side to American families, the disillusioned, discontent, disjointed, disconnected, and yeah, it's a very different kind of twisted movie, Anthology. I actually enjoyed it very much. Family portraits. And thank you for watching.